America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your holiday weekend. I'd like to start with a comment about public comment. While it's not required by law, and it's even discouraged in some of our nearby towns, it's been the tradition of this Board of Selectmen to encourage public input at our meetings through public comment. Section 1.11 of the Board of Selectmen Policies and Procedures spells out the intentions of the board to strengthen communication with citizens, increase citizen participation, and encourage input to board decisions. The guidelines under public comment call for a section of the meeting of no more than 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allowed per speaker, but gives considerable leeway to the chairman. It's been my practice to give considerable leeway to those wishing to speak, even allowing questions and brief statements on matters under consideration during our meetings. When topics are brought up during public comments that appear to require a lengthy response or detailed discussion, we usually put off this discussion to a future meeting for 2 reasons. Number 1, it gives us a chance to review the topic, the facts, and gather the appropriate resources to have a productive discussion. And 2, more importantly, it lets us put it on a posted agenda and publicize this upcoming discussion so that all residents that would like to participate in the discussion may attend and be heard. I hope this makes the role of public comment during our meetings clear, and I hope many of our residents take advantage of this opportunity to be heard. Any other public comment from the board?
I have 2 things. I want to thank the Lunenburg Fire Department and for its efforts in collecting goods and cash to be brought down to Texas, dealing with the aftermath of the hurricane there. Secondly, as posted with the town clerks and on the town bulletin board, the initial charter review committee meeting will be tomorrow night, Wednesday the 6th at 7 p.m. at the Ritter Building. It'll be an organizing meeting and setting up schedules and other things like that.
I have one other announcement. The town or the selectmen will set up its volunteer booth at the Lions Club Fair Saturday. We'll have talent bank forms available, and anyone who might be interested in asking about, discussing, or signing up for open positions on any of the town's boards or committees is welcome to stop by. Also, if anyone would like to help me staff that booth, I'd be more than happy to have the company. Is there any public comment from the public? Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dave Rogers. I live at 82 Highland Street, and I'm here this evening to talk about your 4th section in your current business under the agenda section. I'm here to request respectfully that you increase and champion by increasing the area known as the protection of persons and property. Not a day goes by that we don't hear or read or listen to facts that are horrific with drugs and all of that sort of thing. And for the longest time, in my opinion, we have made do with what we have for the police and the fire. And I understand that this board has tried to take monies from new growth, and that's commendable. But I just, in my view, I don't think that it's enough. We have to do something, and we better do it quick. The most important asset that the town has, in my mind, is the people. And by making sure that the protection of persons and properties are well taken care of would certainly bolster and enhance our comfort level in town. I know, and you know, but I'm not sure that everybody knows, that the police and fire station is not manned 24/7, 365. And I think that it's time that we do that. And the first question, I guess, would, well, how do we do it, Dave? And my suggestion to this board is as follows: that the town manager be instructed to convene the meeting of the town accountant, the fire chief, the chief of police, and the chairman of the board of the finance board, and to sit down and to clearly outline what we're up against as a community and make some suggestions as to how we can get 24/7, 365 coverage. And report back to you, the Board of Selectmen, with their recommendations. And I say this now, and it's coincidental that you're going to be doing goal setting, because it's going to take a long time to do this, and I know people are really pressed for time and at budget time, et cetera. So that's my recommendation and my strong suggestion and my hope that you will undertake this and set forth so that we can come to grips with this. And I guess before anybody asks, if they ask, but very frankly, I'm going to be upfront with you as I always try to be. I'm not advocating an override, and I suggest that we handle this the same way that we've done everything else in this town. That we get together, we put our heads together, and we come up with ideas, and we work the thing through. So I hope that you will support this, and I will look forward to hearing the consensus from this group. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please.
Katie Adams, Williams Drive, and I just wanted to start by apologizing for my public comment getting a little angry on August 22nd. I think that was coming off from frustration and concern that was stemmed from the meeting on August 14th, where indeed, you all voted 5-0 to move town offices, or your preferred option would be in TC Passios. And I think what's missing there is that would leave Town Hall empty and Ritter empty, and we're just not getting a lot of feedback on what that means for the center of town. What's the aftermath of moving out? And, really, if it comes down to selling the buildings and the acreage that goes with the old primary, I think that's really short-sighted, because I think the municipal land has future municipal use. And I get really general sometimes when I public comment, and I'll say, I've read this or I've researched that. So to just try to explain, where my anger came from or my frustration came from, I just have 2 examples of the type of thing that has gotten me so worried. And so in closing, I'm just going to use specific examples rather than being general. On November special town meeting, 11/28/2016, this is a direct quote from Damon McQuaid. It says, "The goal is to get these buildings out of the town's control and into the use of a private developer/investor who is going to bring life to the community. Moving these buildings from town control to private control is really in the best interest of the town. It's really what the reuse committee is looking for." August 2016 minutes. "The best opportunity is to sell the Ritter and the primary properties, perhaps as a package. Before we can sell the Ritter, we need a place for town offices that are there now." So these are the type of things I've read and the type of things I've heard that, when combined with the fact you voted to leave these buildings, it makes me extremely concerned that the center is in jeopardy. And I think it's an important topic, and I think it warrants people possibly being upset or worried. And that is just an explanation of where I was coming from at the last meeting. Thank you.
Any other public comment from the public? Okay. Our first appointment is 7:05, the St. Boniface Parish one-day beer and wine license for October 7th, 2017. Gentlemen.
Good evening, Tom Bodkin, 64 Beale Street.
And Claude Poirier, 68 Wildwood Road.
And we're here this evening to request a one-day liquor license for our Oktoberfest that's going to take place on October 7th between the hours of 1 and 7 PM. I think you should have our application before you, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
It's beer and wine, right, not liquor?
Beer
That's
and wine.
correct.
That was my bad, I'm sorry.
Did I say all alcohol? So, Freudian
Just want
slip.
to clarify, that's all.
Have we checked with the police chief as to any concerns that he might have?
He's here tonight. I'm not sure. It's packaged. Yes.
Chief, was there any concerns on this, or did you?
Not at all.
No, okay.
Thank you.
We do have the applications, there's still some query checks that are underway.
Actually, we have all of those.
Okay.
I got them right here, and I'll make sure that Elaine, we either fax that to Elaine tomorrow morning, we'll have it, and we got a plot plan as well that she
Okay.
needed. Those are the only pending things I think she had.
And we have our tip certification.
Yeah, we had
Yeah, we have
tip
that.
serve-
in the
We have
package.
that.
Yeah, you have that. So there's only 5 members that are actually going to be there, but that's plenty to take care of what we need for that day.
I would make a motion to approve the one-day sale of alcoholic beverages, beer and wine for St. Boniface Parish on October 7th between the hours of 1 and 7, pending satisfactory approval of the query checks by selectmen staff.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
So she'll have them in the file.
You want me to hand you the queries now, or do you want me to?
Give them to Heather.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. We wish you luck, success.
Okay, our 7:10 Historical Society request to use the parking lot on October 8th. Gentlemen,
Good evening, Chuck Venezia, 1402 Mass Ave.
Bill Tyler, 5 Grand Street.
Thank you for allowing us to come here to speak on behalf of the Historical Society. We're planning a fundraising event for October 8th, that's a Sunday. And it's going to be a yard sale and a craft sale. So the Historical Society will have its own table selling items, and we are renting spots to the public to sell craft items and yard sale items. So we are here to ask permission to use the parking lot in front of our building to have this event. And I think you probably have the email that I had sent with the information on it.
Do you have a plot plan by any chance of where parking is going to be in relationship to where the tables are going to be? Or do you have a plan of how
I
that's
think
going to
we're
be laid out?
we're sort of waiting to see what the response is going to be.
Okay, okay.
But we're kind of thinking a 10 by 10 spot
Yeah.
is the number, because that's like a common size if somebody brings a tent. So I think there will be plenty of room.
I would make a motion to approve the request to use the municipal parking lot on October 8th for the Historical Society fundraiser/yard sale.
Second?
any further discussion? I just have a question. Have you coordinated in any way with the farm stand? Do they know you're going to be there?
Yeah, we did go to their last meeting, and they have some things that they're planning, I think some music and
It's
so
probably
on.
a good cross.
Right, I mean, it's during their time anyway.
Right, right.
And we have some old farm tools that they will bring out.
Okay,
I think they're hoping to maybe have some old tractors, too.
okay, cool. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
One more thing I might want to mention. We have a pillory now, and some people call it a stock, but pillory you stand. So, out of appreciation, if any of you would like to stop by for a photo op, it'd be great to see you all. Thank you.
Wouldn't want to miss that.
Might be a fundraiser.
People can't throw anything.
And our third appointment at 7:15 is for a toll booth fundraiser location change for the Boys and Girls Club.
Hi, good evening. Jim Levesque with the Boys and Girls Club, 33 Lancaster Avenue. We had previously gotten the approval to do a toll booth on the date of the 9th, closer down towards the fair. After discussion with the Turkey Hill Family Lions Club, we have chosen to move the location to Town Center if possible, just to avoid any confusion. So that's all we're asking at this point.
I would make a motion to approve the location change for the Boys and Girls Club toll fundraiser from Lancaster Ave to the Town Center, Mass Ave and Lancaster Ave.
Second?
Any further discussion? Chief, do you have any concerns on that?
Not at all, no. As long as they're wearing the vest.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll have the waivers as well.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have a lot of rules and regs. First one on the current business is traffic rules and regulations, a follow-up discussion on our previous discussions.
Where do we begin? Just a couple comments before we get started. I sent a letter to the town manager, and she may not have even got yet, email, requesting that a couple of items be put on the next town meeting with respect to accepting the new speed regulation laws and accepting Chapter 90, Section 20A and a half, which will help us comply with the fine schedule for the parking violations. Presently, we're under Section 9020A, and that, the way I understand it, that doesn't comply with our current schedule. If we don't do that, we'd have to change all of our parking tickets that we've already had printed up and so on and so forth. So that letter's out there. I also sent a letter last week. I'm not even sure if you got that because I emailed that to you as well. But that was a letter asking that the Board of Selectmen consider some truck exclusions that I've identified in the letter. And if so, that MRPC will do the study as long as the board signs off on it. So that's out there as well. And that was all done as part of the research I've done for this traffic rules and regulations. So where would you like to begin? As a matter of fact, I sent out a more current copy of this tonight. I don't know if everybody has it, but
We do.
What
We
time
do.
is it? Because I mean,
The printed
5
copy?
o'clock,
The
4
printed
o'clock,
one
4:30.
that, yeah, I reviewed the one from earlier, but there's a printed one that's on the table that was
Okay.
left for us.
Yeah, if you just kind of point out any
Any changes?
major
All
updates.
right.
Yeah.
I guess one question I have is, we went over Schedule 1 parking, and there were going to be some changes. Are those still going to happen?
I think we.
All right, I think we were going to eliminate some of the ones that we didn't feel were necessary. Is
Yeah,
that-
we
is
talked
that
about it,
the-
but we didn't make any
Yeah,
decisions yet.
What we thought we would do was adopt the rules and regs to get it out there, because they're current, and they're currently in place. And then I'm doing work on mapping what's there, so we can visually see where things
Right,
are.
so that we can visually see it, or even possibly,
And
we
then-
talked about maybe even going out and
Yeah,
looking at
we
them.
make some changes after
Yeah.
that, so we're not,
Amending them
we're
after.
not adding or deleting anything now without any discussion.
Although I think I did delete the Beale Street. Remember we talked about Beale Street?
Because that
It was
was back
done.
to the Buttercup.
Right, Buttercup's no longer there. So those I did delete. Is definitely not necessary at this point. Let me just go through this as quick as I can. There's a lot of, as you can see, there's a lot of formatting changes, so, in your copy, but it's the only way to do it, you know, and actually show what was done. So I went through the minutes of our last meeting and took all the questions, I made notes on them, and I tried to make every single change. I don't believe I missed any of them that was requested by the board, or that we agreed on, you know, changes we agreed on making, are all done in here. And I'll try to hit on some of those changes. If I can get through all the formatting. It was in Article 3, Section 3-2, that was just Joel had just suggested to change any person who to no person shall, which changes willfully deface, because it would be willfully defacing otherwise. So that change was made. That was one of Joel
I'm
Bard's.
sorry, what was the change?
I'm sorry. It's confusing, but it says,
It says it would be no person shall instead of any person who.
yeah, no person shall will.
Shall willfully.
Okay, so that must be on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't
Yeah.
have that on mine, okay.
That might be the updated one. Section 3-4 was asked to change the superintendent of streets to the Department of Public Works DPW director, that change was made.
So the big change in this version is Article 5, the tow-away zones, compared to the one we looked at
Right,
earlier, correct?
yes, the tollway zone and the other big, not change, but something I forgot to add was the penalties, the penalty section. Well, it is actually a change, but I didn't add it in the original copy. The one you got tonight, you should have it.
And where is that?
Penalty is Section 9, or Chapter 9, Section 9-1, I believe.
Page 42. Talking about the fine schedule?
Nope, back up a few pages to, let's see,
Is it
Page 23.
scheduled?
thank you.
This is just a formatting thing, where in the bottom where it says Town of Lunenburg, traffic rules and regs, and the page numbers, the dark blue makes it practically illegible to read the page numbers and stuff.
Yeah, that's an easy fix, I can, yeah, I'm struggling myself right now. Bad idea.
Page 23 has...
So that's 23, yes, page 23.
And then you also have page 42 is Schedule 11 called fines. So that relates back to other sections not within Chapter 90, 27A and a half. It's all the other violations that we have.
It's nice to see that in one spot. I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
Very helpful.
helpful for
Yeah.
anyone who wants to reference
Yeah.
that.
What's that?
The
Fine
fee
schedule?
schedule, the fee schedule.
Oh, yeah,
It's
Page
on-
42.
okay. So that's a major change that was requested anyway, is that fine?
And the sections that still have the fines in them, those are the fines in accordance with Mass General Law. The other areas which are punishable by a fine, which are local ordinances,
Right.
that doesn't identify the fine, it just is in the fee schedule, correct?
yeah.
Okay.
So that, I mean, I assume these are going to be, when they're finished, they're going to be submitted to the AGs or to the Department of Public Works or whatever, Department of Transportation rather, for approval, I believe. Is that true? Well, anyways, the fines are all, I think, Bob, you asked this question, are our parking fines in parity with the other cities and towns? And the answer is yes. On the average, our fines are within the parity of between. I can't even tell you how many I've looked at. It was several. I wouldn't even want to put a number on it. I've read traffic rules and regulations ad nauseum, and most of them are higher than $20. $20, a lot of them are at $20, and there's a reason for that. I think there's a lot of confusion in how the boards of selectmen in cities can set fines. I'm going to test that, but you know, the board of selectmen have the authority to set penalties. And I think there's a lot of confusion because of some antiquated laws that go back as far as 1922. Actually, one of them went back to the 1800s when there was no cars. And this is all these laws are just based on, the laws we're enacting are based on vehicle traffic. There was no vehicles when this law was enacted. So eventually, I assume there's going to be some legislative corrections made with respect to that particular law, that that kind of makes it cloudy with respect to how much you can increase the fines. But I noticed in a lot of other cities and towns, the traffic rules and regulations have appropriate, reasonable amounts of, the fines are based on, I think, a reasonable amount. And there's a case law out there, Commonwealth versus Diaz, that speaks to that issue, the reasonableness of the fine. So I'm going to throw caution to the wind and leave it as is, and if anybody wants to object to that, then I guess we'll deal with it then, because it's not a case that's going to get anybody in trouble. It's a case, I think it needs to be clarified eventually by state legislators.
So the question I have on the fines schedule on page 42, when these are paid, does this money comes to the town treasury?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question is, because these are not parking things, they're actually traffic violations, does this affect a person's insurance surcharge?
In many cases, yes, unless it's enumerated in the Mass state laws. And some of them are. It says right in it, it doesn't affect the merit rating fees. So, yes, in most cases, I would say yes.
So then, is there a process by which somebody can appeal it? Does it go to the court, or is that?
Yes, the appeal process is exactly the same. So if somebody writes a ticket, they have 20 days to appeal the fine in front of a clerk magistrate.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I could go page to page, through every page and point out every single correction if you'd like, or
I
is
don't,
it just?
I don't think that.
I think we've had a lot of discussion. I think if anybody has any specific questions, would we?
I do have a couple. On Schedule 1A, which is on page 27, you identify the off-street parking areas, and this is a question. I thought that the handicap space on Holman Street for the Lane property was an off-street parking.
It's actually now page 828.
Oh, okay, sorry, page 28 now. Because the handicap is right off of in front of the barricade, is where the handicap space is.
Right, it's listed at
In one of the places it's listed, but it's not listed in the off-street parking.
Right, yeah, it isn't, and you're right, maybe it should be listed.
Because you identified other handicap parking, so I think that should be there as well.
That's the Holman at the bridge, right?
Yeah.
So you want to list it in both places?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then additionally, this is just more of a question, in Schedule 4, which I'm assuming is now page 31, is the isolated stop signs. We had talked about private signs and how we were going to address those and whether we were going to incorporate that, and I'm just wondering where we left that, because there are some that I know are critical.
Adam's still here? No? Okay, that's kind of still in flux, because Adam has done some work to identify all of those stop signs, and then I think we're going to have to revisit that whole thing and have the owners of the property just say, yes, we want stop signs there just to make it legal.
Okay.
And then, so that's going to be a little bit of a process, but.
Okay, so the same thing, we're going to adopt this now and then go back and revisit this section.
He may even have it all done. He made a comment to me at a meeting last week about the stop signs, and I didn't follow it up, quite honestly, with him.
Okay. And I think that's all that I had.
I did put the Oak Ave stop sign in there and took it out of the yield sign. And I found a couple of the stop signs today. I found an old folder from the 60s. Actually, Bob, you signed off on a couple of these as the clerk. Stop signs that were approved but never put in the traffic rules, so I put those in as well. It's just an oversight, I think, because...
The signs are there, they just...
The signs are there, yeah, but
They were approved,
they just weren't listed in the traffic.
So the only other thing that I noted, excuse me, Schedule 7 on page 39, 20-mile-an-hour school zones. It says Northfield Road, both directions. The Turkey Hill Middle School needs to be changed to Turkey Hill Elementary. And Oak Ave to a point 650 feet south. I think it's Oak Ave, also 650 feet north, because you added flashing light on both sides of Oak Ave on Northfield Road.
Okay, yep, forgot about that. Thank you. 1 to 500 West.
So what is the process for this, for adoption?
That I'm not sure of. If it needs to go back to Mass DOT for approval.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it has to, everything has
I
to go back
think
to
we
Mass
adopt
DOT.
it and send it to them.
Submit it.
Right.
And do they have a certain timeline in which to comment, or is it adopted as soon as we adopt it? If we could just find that out for next meeting. And then, I just want to understand the process, because there's certainly going to be amendments to this.
Yes, right, the process for amendment.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works today, but the ones from the 60s took about a month.
Okay.
So I learned.
I'm guessing
that.
it might be longer.
Are we prepared to make a motion tonight? mean,
I am.
Okay. I would make a motion that we adopt the traffic rules and regulations, rules and orders as submitted with the correction to the 20-mile-an-hour school zone section on Oak Ave and the handicap parking on
Holman
Street near the Lane property. Goes with you too?
Yep. Second.
Any further discussion?
So the discussion is that this is effectively adopting the current with some improvements that we've done for work, with additional work still be done on stop signs and other sections that
And
we
no
talked about.
parking.
And no parking.
So, when I clean them up, I'll email them and get another chance to take a peek at them, and if there's any issues, we can always straighten it out. All right.
All those in favor? Aye. Jim, I know how much work this was. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
It's our way to say we support the department to give you the tools to do what you are already doing, but now you've got more documentation.
So just the town meeting issues and everything cleaned up.
All right, next policy is the 5-year moratorium policy for road openings.
Before we go to that, I just want to understand what the chief just said. So does this has to go back to town meeting and then to, no, it does not. Okay.
The new speed control and the Chapter 90.
The Chapter 90 and the 90, yeah, okay.
Those things.
Okay. Sorry.
Which we may change some of the speed limits as a result of having the power to do the speed control.
Okay.
You on that or is Jack? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Ms. Lemieux, just a quick comment before I start. I stood at this podium probably more times than I can remember, and tonight it just seems to be a more pleasant atmosphere, an atmosphere of cooperation and kindness and a little humor, and I just I want to commend you on that and others, and just tell you how important it is to me singularly, but to those that have to present before the board in an atmosphere that's non-adversarial. So it means a lot to us here. 2 years ago, this board chose the number 70%, 70+%. Solid C average, and they chose to make that the goal for our conditions of our roads townwide. 2 years into that program, it's funded by Chapter 90 and the debt exclusion and pavement management. We've made some substantial progress, and we will continue to make progress. So what I'm here tonight is to ask for your help, and your help in a sense that to establish a policy that protects our investment and that does not allow for unnecessary cuts into roads ever, but more specifically, no cuts into roads for 5 years upon the date of completion of the pavement of that road. Now, did you all get was Ms. Lemieux get, all right, good. So, I think this is a better draft. But as in the first one, the moratorium section is very small. It's very simple. Nobody's going to get into the roadways with a cut for 5 years. End of story. That's it. It's not going to happen. Of course, that's not the way we operate in this community, and we all understand that there are hardships and circumstances where the 5-year moratorium could not only be cumbersome, but for example, a water service that a person needs or a gas service for heat comes under the category of hardship. So we can't establish a moratorium that says you're not going to go anywhere under the surface of the road for 5 years. So the meat of this policy actually speaks of the exemptions, but more than the exemptions, the procedure. We've got one paragraph on the fact that you cannot do it, you're not allowed to do it, and then 3 pages on if you need to do it, this is how it will be done. And the chain of command there is, as it should be, it comes to the Public Works Director first. It can be appealed to his supervisor, the town manager, and then it can be further appealed to the Board of Selectmen, who are, as everyone knows, the road commissioners. I'm not sure at this point, well, let's start through it. Let's see if it becomes cumbersome. How this will happen is that the applicant, once we've established that it's a hardship, the applicant has to take out a special permit, 1 through 3, just basic information, how long it will take. There'll be a construction plan consistent with repair methods in the policy. At that time, there'll be a notice, depending upon the size and the dynamic of the cut. Other utility companies will be made aware in case the cut is large enough so that they might take that opportunity to do something there. And the application will be completed and returned to me. And down through here, it'll take 21 days. It's the protocol. There'll be a fee. I haven't put the fee in here. I think that's more I can make a recommendation, but that fee perhaps is more for the Board of Selectmen. Anything that was review, say it was a development. I keep talking about a water service or a gas service. That's a very small cut into the pavement, but say there was going to be a larger cut for utilities as a roadway was going to put between 2 houses to develop, X amount of acres in the back, a cul-de-sac or something like that. So that would be a more extensive review. And the repair would be more extensive. In the construction requirements, A and B, cuts that are perpendicular into the road will be addressed a certain way. Longitudinal cuts, say long pipelines, if the water district or the gas or some other pipeline utility chooses to go thousands of feet in a roadway, that's certainly more impactful than a small 3x5 trench for gas service. And B and C list the methods of repair, which to some, maybe a little cumbersome, but it talks about subsurface construction, talks about subsurface materials, the way that material should be either tested or come under someone's inspection, how it should be compacted, the asphalt, how it should be replaced, whether a single lane is impacted, whether a full lane curb to curb is impacted, and then C goes to methods in terms of how it will be done, the materials that will be used, and then how it will be done under construction methods. Of course, as this application goes forward, as usual with a road opening permit, we would get the contractor certificate of insurance, and he would guarantee the project, like most projects we have, large and small, for a period of 1 year following the completion. It will also extend 1 year if the repair goes into disrepair and must be addressed. Then the warranty period will begin from that point forward. Sort of a brief overview. So to the level of detail you'd like to ask questions, let me just frame that. What I'm asking you to do is now that we're really in gear, because the people voted for the debt exclusion, we've dedicated more money to pavement management, we still have our Chapter 90, we're paving more roads. It was roads, we're getting there, we're underway. We're doing well, I think, considering the bar was pretty low at some point. So what I'm asking you to do is just look and say to folks through me that no, you just can't randomly come and dig a trench because it's convenient for you. Your well is fine, but I think we'd like to have town water because, you know, I want to something ridiculous, like water my lawn or something more. Now that may be appropriate for that person. He may want a nice lawn, but if the well's in good shape, we're not going to allow them to cut into a road that's been paved 5 years or less just for the convenience of having town water. Now conversely, say someone's well was contaminated and that's their only water source. Well, that's a whole different can of worms, and that would come under hardship. And we would say, okay, you do need a water source, that's a public safety issue. Where's your application? Okay, here's the plan, fine. We collect the fee, this is how you're gonna do it.
I guess my first question is, are the residents being made aware of this before their roads are paved?
Well, that's another whole part of this. Do you have any questions on the specifics of this? Because I can get into that.
Yeah, I actually do. You have, is anybody else?
Because I'd like to get to that, or I can answer it now, it's okay.
I do have a couple.
More nuts and bolts?
I think this is a good policy. I think it makes sense. I think that it doesn't make sense to keep cutting open roads because it affects the integrity of the roadway. And we have, as a community, made a commitment to upgrade all of the roads. But one of the things that you just talked about, which is the size of a project, is going to impact the amount of plan review, and I'm assuming the amount of job oversight that needs to be done. So my first question to you is, would you be looking at a tiered fee schedule depending on the length of the roadway that's going to be disturbed, or how would you recommend that we go about setting that fee?
Naturally, it's your choice. But if I could make a recommendation, it would probably be based on the scope of work.
Okay.
I keep going back to a water or gas service because everybody probably knows it's a 5 by 10 cut on one lane. If someone's going to cut a roadway in where they want to bring gas and sewer and water and they're 10 feet apart typically, and maybe there's underground electricity, well, certainly the scope, the physical scope of that would be greater. And so the fee, I expect, would be greater.
So I guess as one member, I would look to you for some guidance on how we would go about doing that, because I don't know what would be involved in the plan review. I don't know what would be involved in the job supervision, but I can absolutely understand how that's a very different situation versus a small cut for a single-family home versus opening entire sections of the roadway for a mile or perhaps even more for a development. So
Sure.
I'd like to understand from you and get a recommendation from you on how you would recommend we would implement a fee.
Fine, be happy to do that.
The other question that I had was relative to the timeframes.
Where are you?
On section 5.
Exemption.
Yeah, so number D talks about 30 days from submission that the DPW director acts. Then if they're not happy with that, they can submit to the town manager, and then it's 21 days. And then if they're not happy with that, then they can appeal to us, which is another 21 days. The one thing that I'm concerned about is the timeline, because as you know, paving is seasonal.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there's any way we could shorten that
Well, it's within.
timeframe.
It's
Okay.
within. We can certainly shorten it.
Okay,
It's your policy at the end of the day.
okay.
We can do whatever it takes to make it pass. I think the key here is within. In other words, I have X amount of days, a town manager within 30 days. Maybe she's gone for 2 weeks.
Right.
The board. If you'd like to shorten that up, we could certainly shorten that up. I don't expect that, at least for myself, speaking for myself, a decision is going to take 21 days. This was reviewed by our new council.
Yeah,
Some of these times and part of the legalese is theirs, and we went back and forth a little bit, and I agreed. So perhaps there's something to that, but that certainly could be shortened. And you're right, because the pay, I mean, if we all go to the limit of our time to decide,
The window of opportunity closed.
It could be fall.
Yeah.
And we don't, I at least, and I sure you wouldn't want to be accused of, sandbagging something like
Right.
this. So
Right.
I have no intention of doing so. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you as a board do not, nor does the town manager. So we can look at that, sure, Paul.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in D, it says DPW director shall issue the response within 30 days. The subsequent 21-day appeals are giving the applicant 21 days to file the appeal. It's not saying we're going to answer them in 21 days.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Well, then that's missing. I think we do, I think we have to put in what time frame we're going to
Well, I
respond.
think H
You're
does that.
absolutely
I
right.
was just going to talk about the conflict. H says the whole thing is 2 months from the date of the issuance.
No, that the permit is.
The
once it's
permit's only
issued.
valid for 2 months. So once they
Right.
have the permit, they have 2 months to open the
But
road.
let's say, right now, the applicant is not happy with Jack's decision, goes to Heather within 21 days, but it doesn't say how long.
How
the
long
town
Heather
manager
has to act, and it doesn't say how long we have to act. So I think we have to add that.
Okay, tighten up on the timeline.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
F and G.
And they may not, every case obviously is different. It may, I don't know how many will be appealed, or how many will be
I mean,
extended.
it makes sense for you to have 30 days initially because there's a lot of work. I would say that we would hold the town manager and us to 14 days
Yeah, I think
to make
so.
a decision.
I would agree.
Very good.
So if we could, so it gives them 21 days to appeal, and then we have, once they've appealed, the town manager or the board has 14 days to act. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Heather, do you think that'd be enough time for you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
One question, Jack just mentioned that the town manager's on vacation for 2 weeks. Do we say the town manager or their designee? So when you're gone, you appoint an acting town manager. I think that we want to say the town manager or their designee in section F.
That makes sense.
Right.
We don't want anything to happen to Heather, but, good. That's a good cleanup. Anything else in the nuts and
All I
bolts?
had, I don't know what else Phyllis has.
Just looking
Okay.
at in the policy statement, maybe this was the lawyers, and it kind of looks like lawyerese, but the second sentence, I don't understand the purpose of the second sentence. The policy reads fine without it.
Yeah,
It's almost like we don't need it. 'cause
Yeah,
you go to the
I would
next sentence,
delete
the
that
purpose of
second
these
sentence.
Do you think
regulations.
it's redundant?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
think-
eliminate that sentence. Yeah, it
The-
reads
the
fine
the
without it,
next
it
sentence,
flows
yeah.
fine, yeah.
But back to Mrs. Luck's point, I think that this whole thing hangs together with, do people get enough notice before we pave a road
Yeah.
to put in an application and to do this kind of stuff? Because the only time we're going to have an application for, well, I shouldn't say the only time, but one of the times we're going to have an application for exemption is somebody who didn't know we were going to pave.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this at the last time.
We did, and maybe we can go back there now, because I didn't mean to put you off.
No, that's okay.
I know one of the selectmen's goals is public involvement. I couldn't agree more. Anybody that's been to a town meeting can see that with, there's other issues as well. For my purposes, we'll use anything and everything at my disposal. That's the Sentinel Enterprise, the Lunenburg Ledger, the website, these meetings, letters to the residents, phone calls from the residents where I encourage them to look to the website. Just as anecdotal evidence, I don't go to the Sentinel, but I do still put these letters, and it's very specific, and it's very specific in the town website. Still, it surprises me, people that call that don't read the letter or don't go to the town website. So I will continue to be creative in terms of how I get to these people, but just as you see and have identified as a major goal, public involvement, I think it's incumbent at some point upon the public to be aware. Now, I'm not saying it's their entire responsibility to know when Jack's coming down the road with the paver, but there's a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of information that you guys bring to the public on a weekly basis, or a bi-weekly basis, or 3 times a month. So this, it may border on sounding negative, and it's not meant to be at all. But I think that's part of the process as we move forward with, in that ambitious goal of trying to get more people involved. People do have to be more involved. They have a responsibility. So do we want folks to be left in the lurch? They didn't know the road was being paved, and they wanted to do this. There was a sort of a perfect storm here some months ago, because we had a person moving into town, and there was no real way to communicate with them. It's unlikely they were on the town website when they were living wherever they were living, and we're likely to have those. But from my position, I'll do whatever I can to minimize it. And from your position, I'd like you to continue to raise that expectation and enhance that motivation for people to get involved, not necessarily at the point where we speak of talent bank and getting involved in a committee, which is certainly fantastic, but also just being aware of what's going on in your community, what's going on with the buildings that are hot now, and part of that is what's going on in the roadways.
I have a thought. Could we put like a shortened version of this in with a tax bill and say, see website for further details, not include the whole thing?
Well, it might be, we've talked about, we ought to communicate, but I think it's an ongoing issue. I think so. My suggestion, in addition to that, would be to have a checklist for each road or whatever, so you can track it. And that, as you said, you check off that this notice is sent to the Ledger, the Sentinel website, notifying the local contractors, because the local contractors who do typical work for utilities will be often the communicator to the homeowner. The fact that you do already notify all the utilities that you're going to be doing it. But even just publicizing the roads you're going to pave far enough in advance so people can plan and see it. So that's going to trigger that. And then the other thing is what Unitil did. One thing they did that's good is that when they were going to start cutting the trees on various streets, they either knocked on the door or left a flyer on the door that said, we're going to do trim, please call us, or something else like that. So that is the active part that I think you can do that's tied to the paving that season.
Right.
Now,
But
maybe.
It has to be months in advance.
Oh, well, yeah, no, it's got to be. But you have a plan.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Let's not lose sight of the fact that you were as much a part of this, indeed, as I was for the last 8 or 10 years. There is a plan. There has been a plan out there, and if I had the plan in front of me now, I would probably have a street here and there that came out of order. And that maybe could create a problem, but that plan has been available for
Right, but
years.
the fact is, people pay attention each year. So if we actually say to them, the current plan is to pave your street this year or next year, it may be that type of a thing, and because we think we're going to pave your road. If you decide to add a road, I hope you don't decide it on Friday for Monday, that you're doing that. I hope you're planning ahead, because I know you do, further than that, so you can let people know, because that's we owe that to the homeowners to do that. But at least if we say you're on the pavement management plan over the next 2 years, if you need to do something with the road cutting, here's the plan. It's on the website. So,
This is what you need to do, this
you know,
is the process.
it's something that's 4 years out that you don't think you're going to do, you don't need to notify them now.
We meet annually and kind of go over the pavement management plan, and if there are changes to the plan, you outline what those changes are and what the reasoning is behind why you're making those changes or why you're recommending those changes. And then we all know what roads are going forward. So I think we've got to include that, we've got to do that a little bit sooner in the season maybe. And then we've got to publicize that, and I think the doorknob hanger's a great idea. And it can just be, your road will be paved within X amount of time, or this season. If you have a project coming, you will not be, be aware you will not be permitted to open the road. So therefore, if you have a project in which you need to open the road, you need to apply and see the website or contact the office.
Yeah, and I guess
That's simple.
Part of that is, well, I don't know if it's that simple, but I would like to think it was, certainly. And I would hope that if there was an error made on my part, it was to the point that, well, we told you this, we didn't tell you last minute, this might happen next year, and maybe it doesn't happen for the next year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's okay.
There has to be some sort of,
I'd rather have
moving-
it there that way.
there has to be some sort of moving target. And I could go on the pavement management plan, because I've got a little bit of,
You don't need to.
I haven't gone on that trip for a while, but let's stay with this. So I think, does that answer your question, Phyllis? I'll get to you about the people and,
We really need to.
yeah.
So, I think I'm prepared to approve this as amended. The only thing we don't have is the recommended application fee.
I have one more question though, like in, this is, part C, it says, impacted bike lanes or sidewalks shall be restored in their entirety, and then it says limits to be set by the director. I don't understand, it seems to be, it's confusing. to me.
Where are you?
Under, just above methods of repair.
So,
Okay, so we were going to bring a sewer service to a building on Main Street. All right. And there was no sewer service there, so we would have to go back to the main, and we would have to either tunnel under or break panels or excavate panels of sidewalk. All right, so these sidewalks, although they're not specific to inches of gravel and inches of concrete, reinforced concrete, is gathered under the DPW director, the limits.
I guess, what do you, maybe it's the definition of limits. Is it limits by distance or limits on condition, or what does limits to be set by the director?
I read that as being both,
Then I would say that you need to turn that into non-DPW director language.
What do you mean?
Well, limits to be set by the director, what does that mean? It's not going to be commonly understood what that says.
Because, I don't know, why wouldn't it be enough to say impacted bike lanes or sidewalks shall be restored in their entirety?
Because, well, I think it's important that it's limit set by the director, because it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
So if you go back to B in that same section, the page before, B3, the limits of pavement restoration will depend on the location of the trench line. So there's more definition of what limits are. So you could say the limits of the repair. I guess that doesn't give me any guidance to what are the limits that you're going to set.
Okay.
It's confusing.
So it sounds like you
Where
want
are
some
you?
specifics there.
So, and then the section, and then,
Limits to be set by the director. Maybe it's review? Yeah,
Okay.
so it would confuse me as a consumer. It confuses me now. I don't know what that means.
Means you're going to ask him what you have to do.
but I think you need to say it in English language. I don't think that sentence by itself
Well,
is
I
clear.
think you can, why can't you just say impacted bike lanes or sidewalks shall be restored in their entirety, as directed by the DPW, I mean, why can't you just, because,
Yeah, I mean, something like that.
Yeah.
The way it's written now, it's not clear. So the question is, do we adopt it now without the application fee? I think we should have the application fee before us and adopt the whole policy, or do we adopt it subject to that?
what, could we adopt it saying, the application fee for a street improvement permit shall be in accordance with the fee schedule adopted by the Board of Selectmen acting as road commissioners? And then at our next meeting, we adopt a fee schedule. Because that way, if we change it, we don't have to change the regulation.
Right. I think that's
Goes back to the whole
appropriate.
fee schedule idea. We're trying to get away from putting
I'm
them
okay
in the
with that, for
regulation.
sure.
And this does not require a town meeting vote to adopt a fee, this fee, because it's an
Not according
application fee.
to
No, no.
Ms. Fedorov.
Right.
You know, I actually have one more thing under construction
Policy.
requirements, A, lateral cuts, where it says, or as determined by the director in his, her sole discretion. I know that you need sole.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You could take out the word "sole."
You could stop after director, because isn't that what that means?
I'm sorry?
You could stop after director.
Right.
Right, as determined by the director, right.
Which one is that? Could you kill me in
Lateral cuts shall
A1.
require
A1.
A1.
7A1.
So just stop after director.
Just as determined by the director.
We have some input from,
Planning.
Before we do that, can we just go back to the impacted bike lanes? I want to understand what we're doing on that. That's B, well, 7BC, yeah.
I think
So,
we said as directed by the,
as
As
approved by,
directed by-
as approved by the DPW director, right?
As approved.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me about the bike lanes that we have. And-
No, if-
And I'm
so it's-
expecting in the next 5 years to have some bike lanes. so-
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So it says, impacted bike lanes or sidewalks shall be restored in their entirety as approved by the DPW director.
Okay.
Mr. Bittner, you have something to add?
Hi, Greg Bittner, 129 Pleasant Street. I'm also the Chair of Planning. I don't have the document in front of me, but I do have some general comments. In regards to the seeking relief through an appeal, my concern is that if there's a project that can increase the tax revenue to the town, and they would be prohibited due to the fact that there's a moratorium on curb cuts, I think you as the road wardens would decide whether the tax benefit would outweigh the con of the curb cut. And then also, as far as the informing people prior to the roads being paving, if there's anything that the planning board can do to help facilitate that, because we deal with engineering firms, I'd like to get the word out as soon as possible, and I am aware of it, so anytime we get a project that comes in, I want to make sure they're aware of it, that there is a moratorium, so that we don't hinder any economic development for the town. So, and again, I support this, and I support what Mr. Rodikins is doing, so.
Thanks. Thanks, Greg.
No, thanks for the cooperation of the
I don't,
planning board.
a lot of this stuff is per DPW, and I want you to just understand, and Greg, that, a development is much more dynamic than a water service. And certainly it's something I talked to my supervisor about, and I get the feeling, and I don't want people to understand that, or to leave here thinking that none of the roads that I'm so involved in paving, I'm just going to be death against ever cutting into them. That's not it. That's not it at all. There's value in development, and there's certainly many people can make a case for hardship, or somebody that just develops a single lot that's for sale and doesn't have utilities. So there's a whole myriad of exemptions.
I would
would
make
be-
a motion that we approve the policy with the following changes: deleting the second sentence in policy statement, adding the words on section V, F, and G after town manager or designee, and to add after the sections F and G, decision to be issued within 14 days for both of those. Under application fee, it shall read, the application fee for street improvement permit shall be in accordance with the fee schedule as adopted by the Board of Selectmen. And then Section 7C now reads, impacted bike lanes or sidewalks shall be restored in their entirety as approved by the DPW director. And then to also delete under 7A, subsection 1, delete the last words "in his/her sole discretion."
Second.
Excellent job. Any further discussion?
Could you repeat that?
That's why I wrote it down.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well,
Okay.
thank you very much for your help.
Thanks for
And
your
if
hard
you
work,
could,
Josh.
and if you could just get a fee schedule to us as soon as you can?
Yes.
So that we can adopt that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I was also speaking to Elaine, knowing that she needed to write this down.
Okay, while we're on a roll on policies, we have the use of information technology resources policy, and we actually have two of them, one for employees and one for boards and committees.
Employment Council, Mark Terry drafted these for the town. I reviewed it, as well as the IT director, Steve Maladrinos, made some changes, and we also included one for appointed elected officials for anyone who's issued town equipment.
So I've had an opportunity to review them. I don't have any concerns. And I would make a motion to adopt the information technology resources for employees, boards, and commissions.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Good job, thank you. All righty, our next agenda item is Board of Selectmen goals. I just want to keep this in front of us. We are actually making, or planning to make progress in each of the three goals. We talked a lot tonight about public satisfaction through community involvement. I think we want to start articulating. We have the town manager who articulated what her goals are to support that, but I think we want to start articulating what our specific action plans are for that. We are working on the infrastructure plan, both through the budgeting and the capital planning process. And then most finally, the economic development, identify the desire for and type of economic development. We have at our next week, September 12th workshop, we have a discussion that is set up that will be led by Adam Burney and the town manager, in which, like our last workshop, will be open to the public, obviously, but we're also going to televise this one. Okay, so it might be a little hard to follow along, but I have seen some initial PowerPoints, so there'll be some information that's visual as part of the process. So I just wanted to make sure we keep in front of us, and I'd like to put it on the agenda fairly often for us to review our goals.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments, questions, discussion on our goals?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Keep them in front of us.
We have minutes, we have,
So I have on the August 22nd minutes, the statement that I read, Elaine has it about 95% right, but she's missing some. So I told her today that I would email her the actual statement that I read. So I would ask that we hold on those so that I
okay,
can.
which one is that? What date?
22nd.
The 22nd.
Okay. What's in the folder is the 8th, the 15th, and the 3 executive session minutes.
Okay. Okay, because the 22nd was in, so she must have pulled them after that. Okay.
Warrants? I have a accounts payable warrant in the amount of $220,743.95. Another accounts payable warrant in the amount of $109,462.20. Payroll warrant in the amount of $739,300. $341.31. No payroll deduction, okay. Are there any action file issues?
I actually, okay.
No, go ahead, Phyllis, you talked first.
Paula had brought this up a few meetings ago. The July 28th, 2017 article in the Ledger concerning the Lunenburg Water District. When we talked about that a little bit, according to the article, roughly 2/3 of the population are covered by the Lunenburg Water District. The daily use permit, now I'm quoting the article, so I'm not sure how much, if there's any confusion in the article. The daily use permit is for 240,000 gallons. The article quoted Fran McNamara saying that during last year, 2016, every day they used over 1 million gallons, which was pretty extreme. So that's not adding up to me. Were they exceeding the permit?
Yes.
Through all of those days? And I know that you had asked at the 8-1 meeting for the Lunenburg Water District to come to a Board of Selectmen meeting to discuss Lunenburg's water situation, and I'm hoping that we can do something about that.
I think part of the request was in order to decide whether we were going to approve the letter going to Lancaster.
We didn't approve the letter.
Right.
We
Right.
voted not to.
And we
Right.
missed a window as a result, so I think we want to keep this, we may want to keep this in front of us.
Right,
I think
right,
so.
I agree, I agree.
The other thing, I thought they were also up to need to renew their permit.
There was, at one of the public sessions that they had, they talked about seeking an increase in their water withdrawal permit, but I don't know where they are with that. And that's one of the questions that's in my mind is, where are we with that? Because before we extend to another community, I'd like to know if we are exceeding it to that great extent with our own residents, we need an increase before we start distributing to another community.
Yeah, I do have information I can send to the board.
Okay.
I had a meeting with Fran McNamara, and they are in the process of getting a new permit, which will actually be a decrease.
A decrease?
In the amount, but it's based on historical, but there is another piece of that permit that, and I'll have to look back at my notes, that allows for usage outside of that, that's identified. So
Yeah,
we
I would
not be able
definitely like to
Yeah.
hear more about that.
Yeah, why don't you share with us what you have, and if need be, we'll get that on the September 19th agenda.
Including any deadlines for when they need to submit it. Yeah. Thank you.
I have two action file issues. One is there's a letter in the action file regarding Conservation Commission minutes and the lack thereof, and so I will follow up with Matt Morrow as to what the status is with that as the Conservation Commission liaison. I don't know if you have any information you can share.
I do. That was followed up on when we received that letter, and for some reason they weren't posted on, but we followed up at the town clerk's office and they're all up to date.
They're all up to date, awesome.
So they had been written, just not
Right.
posted, okay.
Okay, great. In the action file, there's also some correspondence from the police department relative to liquor license violations that came about as part of their the work they were doing in conjunction with their compliance grant that they received. And since we have a workshop next week, and, so we're going to be missing a week. I'm just wondering what the process is. I know if ABCC witnesses a violation, they notify us. I would assume that it works in the reverse, that if the town is aware of a violation, then we need to notify ABCC. So I spoke with Elaine a little bit about that, and she talked about sending out a letter to the property owners, letting them know, to the license holders, letting them know that there's a violation and that the Board of Selectmen will may take an action. So we need to put that on our agenda, but in the meantime, I just want to make sure we follow whatever requirements are from the ABCC.
Yes, I worked with Elaine on that as well today, as
Okay.
far as drafting letters to those addresses, liquor
Okay.
license.
Okay, great.
Okay, is that it on action files? Committee reports. Mr. McQuaid.
So at the last planning board meeting, they had a public hearing for the solar field proposed at 994 Northfield Road, and there were a lot of questions from the board as it relates to our status with the pilot agreement with the developer of that project, and they're just worried about potential impacts of that project on the town and having the uncertainty of not having a pilot in place. So the board and some of the people who spoke at the meeting were looking for just a status update from us where we are with a pilot and when we think we're going to have more information on that. And if they should even be thinking about that in terms of their approval.
They've requested they need more time to work on a pilot, to work with the assessor's office, Harold, and myself, and that will be coming up in the first meeting in October. But we have a question into council as well, whether planning board can actually make their permit contingent on the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question
It's
into
two
town
separate.
council right now?
Yes.
Well, I would certainly hope so, because if they get their planning board approval, there's no catalyst for a pilot. So I would hope that we can somehow tie the two together. And if we can't, I would suggest we need to move up that pilot before October 1st. And even if we need to have a special workshop, or I don't want to miss that window of opportunity because there should be some type of agreement in place before the permit approval, in my opinion.
If we didn't have a permit, they would still be taxed based on current property tax rates. There's no guarantee what the value would be going forward.
Exactly.
Right, but there's also the appellate tax board decisions that may make them exempt.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that depending on what town council responds, I think we need to move up that pilot as soon as possible. And if we can schedule it for one of our meetings at September, I would suggest that we do that.
And I watched that meeting on TV as well, and I think just to be super clear is the status of the pilot right now is between the assessor councils and their council,
Mm-hmm.
and while it was stated that it's before the selectmen, it hasn't even gotten to us
Right,
yet, and
right.
that's
So
where-
I guess I'm saying we need to speed up that process in whatever way we can.
The town is prepared to, we're waiting for NEXIAMP to schedule that. And the October meeting was the earliest they could do.
All right, that was it for the planning, and then capital plan, we just met today. Working on, John Henshaw's doing a lot of work working on the kind of the spreadsheet that we use to analyze the capital requests and the forms that go out to the department heads. So we're cleaning those up to get them ready to send out to the department heads by the end of the month, so they can begin filling them out and getting them back to us. And also, at the same time, Heather's working on, with the DPW director and others, to work on a comprehensive capital plan that includes the school buildings and equipment, municipal buildings and equipment, recreational resources, water and sewer infrastructure, so we can have a more holistic view of the town's needs going forward and not just individual department needs. So looking forward to have that in our analysis as well.
Are these forms going out earlier than they have in the past?
That's the goal. Yes.
Great.
Ms. Luck.
Okay, the school committee is meeting tomorrow evening. The Stormwater Task Force met on August 24th. Using the funds from the Community Compact Grant were discussed. We're going to have a follow-up discussion at our 9/28 meeting. At Mrs. Bertram's urging, the task force reached out to Brian Doherty of MRPC concerning the tool they've created for data collection and cataloging. Unfortunately, Brian said that they'd be happy to facilitate a demonstration of this at their office. Unfortunately, the DPW director was not at our meeting, so the task force asked me to reach out to him, and I haven't heard back from him on that. But it sounds like a really interesting tool if we could use it. The status of the 2003 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4 permit requirements was also discussed. System mapping has been completed. Procedures for removing illicit discharges to stormwater systems will be identified and documented by Adam Burney using the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition template. These procedures need to be adopted by the Department of Public Works, so Adam will be in contact with the DPW director. So this is stuff that we still have to get for the 2003 permit. And record keeping and reporting for that permit is also still ahead of us. Our consultants, DCI, have emphasized the importance of the creation of accurate documentation within a central electronic data system to comply with the requirements of the 2003 permit. In DPW Director Roddickman's absence, the item was not addressed. Adam Burney reported that the IDDE, illicit discharge detection and elimination zoning bylaw, as well as the stormwater bylaw, will be put on the fall town meeting warrant to be moved out of zoning and into the general bylaws. They're not going to change them at this point. We're just going to move them and then work on changes that need to be made.
So, just to understand, these things that you just talked about, the procedures for removing illicit discharge, the central data collection, the system mapping, you said that's complete. These are all to do with the 2003 permit?
Yes.
Not the new regulations?
Right.
I thought we were in compliance with the 2003 permit.
We aren't in compliance with the record keeping and reporting. And we need procedures for removing illicit discharges to stormwater systems.
Well, that's concerning. So I don't know, I'm interested to see where we end up with that. And, I mean, obviously, we need to be in compliance. And when you say with reporting, are there reports that we needed to submit on a regular basis that we haven't done?
It's kind of the record keeping. We have to start creating accurate documentation within a central data system.
Okay, then I would really urge that we follow up with that MRPC tool, because it sounded like that's what this tool was going to allow you to do.
Yeah, because the tool allows data collection in the field by a data surveyor who could catalog information from a drop-down list on a phone or tablet, and it would automatically record GPS coordinates, allowing for easier mapping and referencing. I mean,
So our central data system could right now be a file cabinet and would technically meet the requirements.
Okay.
So as long as it's accessible, but I don't know if we have those records.
I don't know if we have tablets, or phones or.
Oh, no, I'm
But
talking about.
Bob is saying that it could be a file cabinet. I mean, if we have that
I
data,
think
it doesn't have to
it's good-
necessarily
it's good
be
to have a
electronic.
tool. Good to have a
Yeah.
tool, especially if we have issues with
Right,
some of these things.
right, but you make a valid point. Yeah, just interested on an update on that, when you guys,
And the
one.
reason taking it out of zoning and putting it to general bylaw?
Adam feels pretty strongly that it doesn't belong in zoning.
Okay.
That it should be a general bylaw. Both of them, the IDDE and stormwater.
Is that it, Ms. Slick?
Yes,
Bertram?
I don't really have anything other than the Conservation Commission meeting was during our meeting our special meeting. The MPO is not meeting this month. The Cable Advisory is meeting Thursday night to continue negotiations with the Comcast representative, and our council will be attending.
So one comment, I was thinking when Jack talked about our goal of the 70% or a sea level condition of roads, once we do Summer Street, that's probably going to dramatically increase our average at that point. So
That's true.
having driven on it this weekend, it's like,
Yeah, it's a little
pretty poor.
scary.
I mean, it'll be good when it's done, and I know that we're not going to spend any money on it until we actually do it, but no reports for me.
And no reports from me. Town manager report?
A few things to report on. We had the public auction of the vacant foreclosed properties that was held on Tuesday, August 29th, and we disposed of 4 out of the 5 properties that were being auctioned. We received no bids for 98 Youngs Road and received a total of $37,000 for the 4 other properties. This will have a direct impact on our free cash for fiscal 18, as well as getting these properties back on the tax rolls.
Question on that? Do you have an idea, so it brought $37,000 in, do you have any idea of the cost associated with going through the legal process and the auction process?
The fees for the legal and for the auctioneer are on top of the minimum bid for those properties.
So this is net to the town?
Right.
So the 37,000 is net. Okay, that doesn't include is there a fee for the tax foreclosure process?
So
I just-
when we originally took it and foreclosed on it.
Yeah, that would take a lot of
Yeah.
research because they go back to 1983.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's going to
okay.
depend on if it was a difficult title, it could have been a lot more expensive
Okay,
versus
okay.
a simpler title.
Okay, but the legal and auction fees are included, so this 37,000 is the profit?
it's net.
Thank you.
The town hall mold abatement project has been completed, and a hygienist will be coming in within the next week to take air samples to confirm that all the mold has been abated. The DPW facilities personnel have installed a dehumidifier and will be installing a sump pump next. The next step after that will be to hire a ventilation engineer to determine what is needed to repair the original exhaust ventilation system on the first floor and whether the existing ductwork can be restored in order to provide fresh air to offices and exhaust air from offices.
Do we have an idea of the cost of this work? The hygienist, the sump pump, the ventilation engineer, do we have any idea of the cost? I think you said the mold abatement itself was in the range of 48,000?
Around 47, 48,000. The hygienist to come in, I think the test itself is $800.
Okay.
after. The ventilation engineer, we do not have a figure for that yet. And the dehumidifier was a couple $100, I believe. Sump pump, I do not know that cost.
Are they testing just the air in the basement or all the levels?
They take a series of air samples, yes, for the basement, and they will do it in the other floors as well. Records retention space. I met with the school facilities director, John Londa, last week to identify a room to store our current town records. And the space we identified is on the other end of the building that the TAPE study identified as a space that we could renovate for town offices, so as not to interfere with any future possible renovations. It is also easily accessible by the side parking lot to enter and moving records into that space. And I have a meeting with the Worcester County Sheriff's Office this Thursday, along with the DPW director, to discuss potential projects. And I will be requesting that moving records from the attic be one of those projects. And as a follow-up for an action item from the last meeting regarding town council office hours, I did reach out to Adam Costa. He can do two office hours for the next couple months. And the next one will be September 11th from 9 to noon. And the other September date will be September 25th from 4 to 7. And he'll be attending a planning board meeting on the 25th. You're welcome.
Just want to go back to something that was brought up during the committee reports, and that's Summer Street. That was supposed to be advertised at the end of August. Do you know if that was advertised?
I can get confirmation, but
It is,
that's
right. I certainly hope so, because if we didn't,
I
we
have
missed
heard
our fiscal
nothing since
opportunity.
we-
So
So,
if you can do that ASAP, because if we didn't advertise, we missed our fiscal funding window,
And that's advertised by,
the end of August.
no, the
No.
person who actually does it, the town or
No.
DP?
No, it's
DOT.
DOT.
Okay, yeah.
Mass dot, yeah.
I'm pretty positive.
If you can just,
That
if you
I
can
would've
just
heard.
verify, if you can just verify.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yes, that's all.
Okay, I have a appointment, reappointment, the ratification of the school committee appointment to the Charter Review Committee, Michael Mackin, 26 Cortlandt Circle.
I would make a motion to ratify the appointment of the school committee to the Charter Review Committee of Michael Mackin of 26 Cortlandt Circle.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And I would report that the town moderator appointment of Millie Keeling, she had to decline to serve for personal reasons, so the town moderator will be finding another person. And the school department has one more appointment that I understand they may be appointing tomorrow.
Okay, now we have that committee will meet tomorrow, and it'll meet with 2 vacancies until those appointments are made. Okay, great. Before I request a motion to enter executive session, is there any public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board?
No.
I would entertain a motion to enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the government's bargaining position or litigating position, and the chair declares so. Namely, Laura Karen Gustis versus Town of Lunenburg, the Board of Selectmen, and Kerry Spidell, individual, Worcester Superior Court Civil Action Number WOCV 2013-0054C, not to return to general session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. McQuaid?
Aye.
Ms. Luck?
Aye.
Ms. Bertram?
Aye.
Mr. Ebersol?
Aye.
And I for myself, Mr. Toll. Good night, everybody.